Good evening, I'm Norman Robinson, and welcome to Affordable Housing Matters, a show developed in order to educate the viewers in our local community with the information needed to attain an affordable living. This evening, I'll talk to Mark Luhan, a senior insurance specialist with FEMA, who will discuss flood plans and flood risk. We will also get up to date on the current real estate market in Louisiana with Dr. Wade Ragas, president of Real Property Associates. We have some valuable information coming up, so please stay with us.
Nightly Business Report. A new team, new editorial resources around the globe.
Chaos here continues.
The same objective, insightful analysis of the top business news of the day.
For the Nightly Business Report, I'm John Ford.
Every weeknight, a half-hour wrap-up of complete market coverage.
With the business and economic stories that are crucial to you.
Television's longest-running business program.
Nightly Business Report.
Weeknights at 5:30 p.m. on WLAE.
Welcome back. The average price for real estate has increased in our area annually post-Hurricane Katrina. And here to tell us how much it has increased and why is Dr. Wade Ragas of Real Property Associates. Dr. Ragas, thank you for being here.
I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, it's great seeing you. I've been following you for years.
Yes, I'm getting old.
No, we're just mature.
We are.
The both of us. As you know, there's been much consternation among those in the public, especially those looking for houses or looking to hold on to housing, looking to hold on to their rental units, about the price of housing. So you've put together some statistics for us.
I have.
Dealing with the New Orleans average house price. Let me phrase it this way: the Metro New Orleans housing price post Katrina for the last 10 years. So what are they?
Okay. Metro is not really the level where the problem is.
Okay.
The Metro house price rose from about $196,000 to $223,000 roughly between pre-Katrina, 2005 pre-Katrina, to the end of 2014. It only went up about 14%. That's about 1.5% a year. So it's not that Metro house prices are galloping up and are so high. But Metro is really made up of kind of three big chunks of land.
All right.
One chunk of land is Orleans Parish, inside the Industrial Canal, near the river, and that's where the affordability issue is a real problem. Then there's the rest of the suburban market next to Orleans, and it's fairly affordable in Jefferson and St. Tammany. And then, frankly, housing's cheap if you look at St. Bernard or St. Charles or St. John.
So you're talking about when you expand beyond the confines of New Orleans proper into the suburban areas, then you find the, let's say, the more reasonable prices.
Yes, and they're actually low compared to national numbers. They're not high.
Really, compared to national numbers?
National numbers, our suburban market is more affordable than much of the suburbs are in the other big southern cities. I mean, if you look at Houston and Dallas, they're experiencing rapid runs in price right now. Miami. So the problem, and it's also a strength, is that Orleans Parish is being highly sought after by a lot of buyers, and there's not that many sellers. So when you have too many buyers and not enough sellers, price goes way up.
So why is Orleans Parish so attractive? And when we talk about Orleans Parish, we're talking about in the area of downtown.
Kind of the crescent, sort of Bywater, around the river, all the way over to Uptown, and then into Carrollton a little bit, and then Lakefront. And that part is going up 4, 5, 6, 7% a year, depending on the year, averaging about 4 or 5% a year for the last almost 10 years. It is ambiance. It is a unique feel as an urban area close to jobs. It has a great set of social programs, private, not just public, but it's a 24/7 environment. And there are very few southern cities that are truly at their center 24/7. This is more like a Chicago or a New York environment.
This was not the case pre-Katrina, however.
Absolutely not.
So what makes it the case post-Katrina?
We had a huge amount of federal money and insurance money pour into Orleans Parish. We had a job growth. We lost jobs, but now we've regained a large part of those jobs. And the jobs we brought back are a little more technology oriented than the jobs we lost. The tourism industry has become extraordinarily strong here. And I attribute some of that to what's happening in media. All of the TV shows, all of the movies that are being
Hollywood
shot
South,
here,
yes.
are the world's seeing those. And they're generally rather favorable in their presentation of the New Orleans area.
So now that brings us, since it's such an attractive market, that brings us to the issue of affordability.
It does.
So how does affordability factor into this?
Okay.
Especially when you're looking at your middle class and your working class.
Okay. At the lowest income groups actually have more housing choices available to them
Really?
than the tier right above them that I call the working poor.
Okay.
Because and many of the lowest income group work. I don't mean to suggest they don't work. I mean to say that we've got federal programs that are oriented towards people who make 80% or less of the median household income. And in Orleans, median household income is below $40,000. So you could be down in the low 30s, high 20s with your income, and you're going to get housing with deep subsidies on it.
So subsidies.
Subsidies, brand new housing with deep discount rents, and the quality of the housing is just the same as the market rate unit right down the hall is. 9-foot ceilings and good quality counters and brand new build out. And there are thousands of those units. You look along Tulane Avenue. There are 4 or 5 big properties there. There's a couple of properties on Earhart. There's more being built right now. So we've replaced a lot of housing with called low-income housing tax credit units, and Section 8's exploded in size here.
So we're talking about, when we talk about affordability, outside of the demographic that you just described,
Right.
what about the people in the middle?
The ones in the middle have the problem. The ones in the middle who are our middle class have the problem. If you're wealthy, then you look at the rents here and you look around the country, and they're not high by national standards. They're close, they're not cheap, but they're not high. But if you're a middle class household and they tell you that the rent for a 1,000-foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bath is $1,700 a month, and you got to pay utilities on top of that, so you're at $2,000 a month, and you only make $3,000 or $4,000, and that would be the upper end of that group. Well, you can't afford it. So we have a problem in the middle where there's no real federal help, and the prices are going up because of a shortage of units, and what is being built is a very upscale unit. And the best example of it is, I think, the Domain Properties, 3 different square blocks they're doing near the corner of Lafayette and O'Keefe Street. And those are over $2 a square foot, almost $2.50 a square foot a month. So 1,000 feet there is $2,000 to $2,500.
Now, CNN Money released a survey in March of 2015 of this year. I'm sure you're familiar
Yes.
with
Yes.
that survey.
Right.
And they talk about the people in the middle class being squeezed out of the rental and housing community. They point to short-term private rentals like Airbnb. How much of a factor is that? Do you buy into that or not?
I think they are a factor, but not so much in this city. I'm not encountering them being a real force here. Maybe I'm not tuned in well enough, but I'm not seeing that. What I am seeing is the housing stock outside of these larger developments is harder to afford to bring back. And we don't really have much help for small developers here or for individuals buying a double or 4 blocks.
Why is that?
Well, we tried a program and it had a lot of difficulties with it. We tried a small rental program using road home money, and that never really got worked out very well, and a bunch of the money didn't get used for the purpose it was supposed to go for, is my impression of it. Maybe that's not an accurate impression, but that was my impression of it. So we don't have any of that any longer. That's all kind of run out. We're through pretty much with the post-FEMA special program type things to a large extent. So we don't have a way, the subsidy path is to get the units Section 8 approved, but a bulk of the households we're talking about make too much money to be in Section 8. So again,
those are the people left out on the outside
yes,
looking in.
Right. So that is, now where can they go? If they
That is
don't
the
stay fixated on being real close to the center of Orleans Parish, if they're willing to look at various locations in Metairie or in St. Bernard or in St. Charles, rents are a third cheaper or more if you go from Orleans to Jefferson.
So, but what is the obstacle for them then when they decide we're going to relocate where we can afford, but our jobs are in New Orleans?
There's jobs in both, and we're not a place with real difficult highway systems. We just made the interstate bigger and friendlier than it used to be. I mean, they drive faster, but it is a 5-lane.
Yes.
It is a big-time interstate system now. So I think it's partly a mental issue that, gee, the fun place to live, the place that has the most interesting diversity to it, is close to the center. Okay, I'll agree to that. But in terms of affordability, you need to broaden your search and look at areas that are along Veterans Highway, or look at areas that are along Airline Highway.
So we're looking down the road in the future to an out-migration.
I think it'll happen. I think price has a way of eventually finding its own level. And I think short run right now, there's this, wow, there was job growth in Orleans and it's a neat place to live and I want a piece of that. Fine. And then it's, oh my God, I can't afford it. And so then they have to deal with the reality of what they can afford. And we do have a housing stock that's not old, that's in decent shape, that's in Jefferson Parish, it's on East and West Bank, it's in St. Bernard, and it's recently rebuilt in St. Bernard. But it will take some time for the market to adjust to that reality.
Now, I want to throw out another stat that CNN Money raised in their survey, and that is, they say, according to their survey, that there are 62,000 rental properties in New Orleans, of which 50,000 are in need of some type of major repair.
I don't know.
Do you buy into that or not?
We've been tearing down. I think it's really hard to get an accurate number on all that. And they're probably looking at the 2010 census data. And what happened here was renovation activity didn't grow rapidly except for these federally subsidized programs from 07 to 10. And then right around 2010, the rate of growth started really accelerating. A lot more construction started happening. And so I think they're looking back at an inaccurate picture. We've torn down thousands and thousands of buildings that needed to be torn down. And we've seen a big move on renovations here. And I don't think we have accurate data because it's been such a dynamic change. And you can see it riding the streets. You don't see that many abandoned, untouched houses now compared to what I was seeing 5 or 6 years ago. Are there some? Sure. Does the city need to do more auction activity if they're 10 years or 15 years delinquent? I think so.
Last question. So, bottom line for Mr. and Mrs. or Mr. and Ms. who want to know where they can find affordable housing is outside of Orleans Parish?
Or they look at New Orleans East.
Okay.
New Orleans East prices are every bit as low as anything in Jefferson or Slidell. And they have a housing stock. A lot of it's very modern. A good bit of it's been renovated. There's vacant rental in that parish and vacant houses in that part of the parish and vacant houses for sale. So they certainly ought to take a hard look. We got 2 Walmarts that went there. We've got a hospital that's there now. We've got the schools back in that area. So it's kind of crying out for people. And it would be affordable. And they'd still be close. And they'd be in Orleans.
And the average price for a 2-bedroom?
I think you're looking at probably numbers a little over $1 a square foot a month. So a 900-foot 2-bedroom is probably under $1,000. Probably around 900 is what I would expect to see. You may find some a little cheaper, some a little more. But But I think that's around an indicative number.
And given the job market and the salary rate, do you think that's doable?
That's much more affordable. That's only about $11,000 a year. So now we're getting to numbers that are much lower compared to what they can earn.
All right. Obviously, there's much more that we can discuss, but we've run out of time.
Well, I appreciate getting to do what we have talked about.
I look forward to having you back.
Happy to do
All right,
that.
thank you, Dr. Ragas.
Thank you very much,
You're
sir.
welcome.
Thank you.
Joining me next is an insurance specialist from FEMA, helping us further prepare for flooding and flood prevention in this hurricane season. Don't go far.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back. Joining us now via phone is Mark Luhan, a senior insurance specialist. Thank you for talking to us, Mr. Luhan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. What do I need to know about flood risk as a resident of South Louisiana?
You know what? The most important thing to understand is that risk is everywhere. So it does not matter what flood zone that you reside in, whether it's your A zones, your special flood hazard area, your A as in apple, or your V as in velocity, your coastal action. Even if you were in the low to moderate risk floodplains like your B, C, or X, your Baker, Charles, and X-ray zones, the risk is still significant. So everyone needs to really pay close attention to where they are, where the high water marks, and work with the local officials. So everyone is at risk, no matter where you live.
I'm surprised, given what we experienced here post Hurricane Katrina or during Hurricane Katrina, that people are still building slab houses, homes on slabs in low-lying areas.
Right. Absolutely, you're absolutely right on that. And the whole reason for that is if you are a post-firm structure, let me explain what that means. Is that if your home was built on or after the initial flood insurance rate map for your local community or parish, you have to build a certain compliance if you are in the special flood hazard area or your high-risk flood zones like your A and B, like I mentioned before. What that means is that if you are building in those high-risk zones, then your lowest floor needs to be built to compliance, or in other words, your lowest floor needs to be at or above the base flood elevation for that area. The problem that comes in is that when people fall outside of those high-risk floodplains, they're in those low to moderate, your B, C, and X zones, everyone thinks that they're safe, that they don't need to even think about flooding because, hey, the map doesn't show that I'm in a high-risk flood zone. Lenders may not require flood insurance when you're in those zones, so why do I even need to worry about it? That's where we slab on grade structures, these post-firm structures, because there's no building requirements. When a local community joins the National Flood Insurance Program, they have to adopt a local floodplain management ordinance that says that they're going to enforce that people's lowest floors are built in compliance if they're in the high risk. Nothing is mentioned if you are in the low to moderate risk zones. So we're trying to educate the local officials that look at adopting some higher standards outside of those zones to where you can still have people elevate and build into compliance so they're safe, because the floodwaters can go anywhere, as we all know.
Given that that I'm in one of those areas that is compliance challenged, what kind of or what types of flood insurance should I be looking for?
If you're in the low to moderate risk floodplain, if you have a limited loss history, so let me explain what that means. If you only filed one flood claim, and that's for your building and contents, then you are able to qualify for what's called the preferred risk policy, or PRP policy, which is, in other words, like a safe driver policy. So you can get Let's use an example. For max coverage for residential structures, $250,000 for building with $100,000 worth of contents coverage. You were looking at somewhere around $475 a year.
Okay.
For your flood insurance. And so everyone should be looking at that. It's fairly inexpensive. I know that costs are always an issue, but that's when you look at what damage does to a home, even when you're outside of those high-risk floodplains, that's something to look at.
Now, how does that relate to comparative shopping?
As far as for your high-risk floodplain?
Yes.
When you're looking at a high risk, this is where elevation comes into play. So everything in those high-risk floodplains, especially for your post-firm structures, is going to be built on elevation differences. So, for instance, if your lowest floor of your home is 2 feet above the base flood elevation, you're going to get a very comparable premium to that preferred risk policy like I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
However, if your lowest floor is, say, right at the base flood elevation, so not above it or not below it, you could be looking at anywhere from $1,200 to $1,300, depending on what deductible you chose. So they are difference in premium options, but it all depends on the elevation difference.
Okay. Where does one go to get information about elevation difference?
Here's what I would do. I would go talk to your local floodplain administrator for your city, your parish, whatever your local community is, and talk to them. They're the local floodplain administrator. Any participating NFIP community has one. And I would talk to them about elevation. Also, if you are a post-firm structure, you would already have, and you're in those high-risk floodplains, you would have an elevation certificate. And that's where you could look at that. So you could take that to your insurance agent and say, hey, here's my elevation certificate. Would you please give me a quote for what this would be? And the agent will punch in those numbers from your lowest floor versus the base flood elevation, be able to give you a quote.
Mm-hmm. Is there a cost associated with acquiring an elevation certificate?
Yes, there is. They vary in price, so they're price competitive. So I will tell everyone to go and get 2 or 3 quotes. But you contact any land surveyor or engineer in your community and just ask them if they do FEMA elevation certificates. They can range anywhere from I've seen them as low as $275, and I've seen them as high as $1,000. It all depends on where you're at, how much work it takes, looking at benchmarks to find that closest base flood elevation, or if they have to establish a base flood elevation, if it's just an A zone without one, like you just say, A zone on the map, not an AE zone, for instance. So there's price variables depending on what you actually need for your property.
Is Mr. Luhan, is there some place on the web or internet that I can go to find a list or a checklist of everything that I should know about flood insurance?
Absolutely. I'm going to give you 2 websites that you can go to. And the first one is the official website of the National Flood Insurance Program, and that is www.floodsmart.gov. And the second one is on our FEMA website, which is www.fema.gov, and then it's /business/NFIP.
NSIP?
NFIP for National Flood Insurance Program.
NFIP, okay.
Yep, and there you're able to find the flood insurance manual. You're able to find information on elevation certificates. You're able to find information for anything that you need, the claims process, anything at all. Those 2 websites would be a great resource for you.
All right, Mark Luhan from FEMA, thank you very much for sharing with us.
Absolutely, thank you.
You're welcome, and good luck to you. You're watching Affordable Housing Matters. We'll be right back after this.
Now, I don't know about you, but for me, I really want to know where my food's coming from. You'll find the difference in flavor is quite remarkable.
The leaves are a lot more tender than the stalks and stems.
Absolutely. It's one of the easiest lamb recipes you'll ever try. It's avocado salsa turkey bacon burger. Make something delicious that you can share with friends and you can enjoy the flavor throughout the entire year.
Saturdays at 5 p.m. on WLAE.
We would like to thank Dr. Ragas and Mr. Luhan for imparting their education on our local community here tonight. And remember, for more information on our guests on this show and others, please visit WLAE.com and click on the Affordable Housing Matters link. There you can get in contact with every guest we've had on our program. Also, tell us what you want to see on Affordable Housing Matters by emailing us at ahm@WLAE.com. Thank you again for joining us this evening. I'm Norman Robinson. Have a good night.